Greetings, salutations, and welcome to SportsLook, the sports television program for the high plains of West Texas and eastern New Mexico. I'm your host, Doc Elder, and tonight we're going to give you an M&M. Not a delicious taste treat that melts in your mouth, not in your hands, but Mike Walden and Brett Merritt. I'm going to finish up with an overtime, but as always, we'll start out with an Eastern recap. Congratulations to the Greyhound Women's Rodeo Squad. They finished second last weekend at the Howard Community College Rodeo. They've got one more rodeo during the regular part of the season. Congratulations to Candace Miles from the Greyhound Women's Track and Field Squad as she qualified for the NCAA Division II Championships in the 200 meters. And congratulations to Katie Welburn and Greyhound Softball on winning what was probably the longest and certainly the coldest softball game I have ever attended in my life. Well, that is your Eastern recap, so we'll clear this out, and I'll bring in my first guest, Mike Walden from Greyhound Football, right now. Welcome back to SportsLook, and what an honor to bring to the set of SportsLook arguably the greatest defensive football player ever in the history of Eastern New Mexico University, Mike Walden. Coach, welcome to SportsLook.
Well, thanks for having me. I think that's probably pretty debatable there, but...
Well, Coach, I got a chance to broadcast all of your football games. You actually started your career at Eastern, and my career started at the same time, and I can tell you, I've never seen anybody better.
Well, I appreciate it. So, and I really appreciate everything you do for this university and for our athletic department.
And Mike, I hope you won't mind my telling a little story. One of my duties at Eastern is I get to host the Hall of Honors banquet, and a few years ago we honored a guy by the name of Nathan Hewlin as the greatest Greyhound. And he said, I'd like to thank some guy named Walden for this award. And he went on to say, if I had a game where I made 12 tackles, my coach would say, yeah, Walden would have made 15. And so he credited you with being his inspiration.
Yeah, poor Nathan. Coach Roboto gave him a hard time, I think.
Well, Mike, we did talk about the fact, obviously, that you were a Greyhound football coach. I've been addressing you as coach, and the connection is now you're coaching for us.
No, I'm excited to be back, yeah. And I'm very thankful for Kelly Lee giving me the opportunity to come back. And what an awesome job that, Josh and Kelly have done together, getting this program back on track, so to speak, and get them back into the conversation within the conference. And obviously last year being ranked nationally got them into the national conversation. So, those guys have done a heck of a job, and I'm just excited to be a part of it. I hope I can help keep it going.
Well, you're a great success story for people that don't know you, a graduate of Spring Lake Earth High School, which is not one of the biggest high schools in the state of Texas, but you came here All-American, and what allowed you to succeed at that level?
I think it was the qualities that our high school coaches instilled in us, starting out with, number one, it's about the team, and then ultimately, what you put in is what you're going to get out of it. So that work ethic that was developed there, and obviously, Earth is not very big. There's not much to do there. So you did every sport, and you counted. Everybody counted on you to be part of football, basketball, track. So it developed that team aspect. And when you get here and you can keep that going, it's kind of easy to. Get that thing and keep it going. So,
Mike, I got a chance to broadcast your games, but I also got a chance to get to know you because you used to come on and play noontime basketball, and I actually played a softball game, an intramural softball game, and you're just a really good all-around athlete.
Well, I appreciate that, but I don't know if I quite live up to the standards of the noon hoops. And I was just telling the story the other day. Not many people know that whenever I first got here, that it was you and
Wendell Sloan.
You and Wendell Sloan started that thing. It was one-on-one, wasn't it?
Yes, it was
one-on-one, and then you guys built it from the ground up, literally. And so. Not many people. I got to scout you guys beforehand for a long time. I still couldn't stop y'all.
Now you're being kind. But, Coach, you were at one time a comm major at Eastern New Mexico University, and you ended up in coaching. What was the transition? When did you say, I'm not going to go into public relations, I want to be a coach?
I think it was, I started developing a really good relationship with Coach Elliott and Coach Roboto and those guys, and they started kind of hinting about maybe possibly being a graduate assistant after I got through playing, and it just kind of one thing led to another there. And I probably really wasn't cut out to be in anything in communications. I obviously got the face to be behind the camera, so. But I think that I enjoyed the camaraderie and watching young men grow and develop, and what the coaches had given me. I was hoping that someday I can maybe give that back to the young men I coach, and I think it's a credit to them because they were such a positive influence in my life that that's the field I chose to go into.
No question about it, and I tell people I may not have amounted to much in life, but what I did amount to, I owe to my coaches.
Yeah.
I mean, it was the lessons I learned in sports. Some success, some failure. You got to learn how to handle both.
Absolutely, no doubt about that. And I've always, I think Coach Moore said you find your winners when you're down 40. It's easy to be a good sport and a good teammate when you're up and everything's going good, but how do you act whenever and respond when things are not going your way? So I think that those lessons that you just talked about, are going to carry a lot of kids, in life.
Well, Coach, you did get hired, and immediately you're thrust into the fire because it's time for the spring schedule. And how far did the defense come in the 15 practices that you're allotted?
I think more than anything, I learned a lesson when I took the defensive coordinator job at another school in the conference, Angelo State. And one lesson that I learned there was don't try to do too much that first spring, because you're not going to get a fair evaluation of the kids, because if you try to do too much, you're going to be sitting there asking yourself, well, are they thinking or are they just not able to play? And so I think it's kind of skewed for us. We kept it pretty simple, and then on top of that, the type of offense we face every day kind of forces you to keep things simple in order to be able to be option sound and all of that stuff. But I'm very pleased with the direction we're heading, and I think more importantly, I think we've got the kids in the right spot. And I think that was the number one goal coming out of spring for us on the defensive side, was let's make sure we got the kids in the right position, and so we're not moving them during fall camp. So I would call it a success.
Coach, we had our crew out on Friday to film your green and silver scrimmage, and we've got a highlight reel, so let's cue it up, and please walk us through it right now.
Well, you can see right there, the wind's got the goalpost bent back pretty good.
A little breezy.
Yeah. First play of the scrimmage, not quite how we wanted to start from a defensive standpoint. We had some guys in position to make some tackles, and credit to the running back. He kept his feet live, and everyone sustained some blocks. They made some things happen.
That's the way you want your defense to play.
Exactly. Those two D tackles there, Roppy and McCracken, they both had good springs. Very pleased with them. Todd County right there, we moved him. He's one of the kids that we've moved down, and he did a good job transitioning, and Dion has done a good job all spring at free safety. And if you can't stop the first phase of the option, it's going to be hard for you all night. I think what Coach Lee, I call him Kelly, but I'm sorry, Coach Lee has done with this offense and evolving it. He's going to always give us a chance to be successful. And not only that, that was one of the things coming back that I knew that it would always give us a chance to be successful defensively, because they're going to be able to keep us off the field. Or at least that's the plan.
Good second effort by running back.
Again, as you can see, a lot of first phase with the fullback getting good yardage. And this is right before half. So we're working a 2-minute drill. So we try to put our kids in different situations throughout the spring so they can, I know Bill Belichick and those guys talk situational football, so our kids understanding that, hey, we may give up a little bit of yardage here, but we're going to get into halftime without giving up a score. And obviously they're teaching the receiver to get out of bounds and trying to stop the clock. So that's what you were seeing there on that last highlight.
Coach, back in the day when I was playing football, back in the days of the single bar face masks, I said I had a coach who said that he needed agility, mobility, and hostility from his defensive players. Has it changed over the years, or are those still the three things you need?
No, those are still the three things. And, you know, and football's changed so much, you know, with the offenses being spread out that, you know, the agility might be, like he said, might be the number one thing you need right off the bat, because they're going to try to get you in the open field and make you miss. And you know, Coach Moore, I know I've referenced Coach Moore, but he might have been ahead of his time. And as a basketball coach, he said if he wanted to find somebody that could tackle, he'd go recruit all the six-man schools. And he might be onto something.
Absolutely.
Because those kids all play in the open field.
And I remember back there was some really good. Bobby Reed came out of Floyd to play. Larry Roybal, small school, came and became a good football player. Looking at the schedule, I hate to look too far ahead, but we've added some pretty tough teams to the schedule for next year.
Yeah, I don't know the exact what number it is, if it's the first four or however many, or I could combine 34 and 4 from last year. You know, something crazy like that. And
including the defending
national champions. And so we're going to find out pretty quick where our strengths and weaknesses are. And, you know, we're relatively young defensively, you know, particularly up front. You know, I'm really excited about our interior D-line. We've got some freshmen, you know, and they've got to grow up fast. And it's going to be on us as coaches to develop them quickly throughout the summer and the fall. And then, you know, again, coming back to what you alluded to earlier, knowing and limiting probably what we can do schematically early and keeping it simple so they can play fast and not be confused. So,
in terms, I know it's still relatively early. August is still a long way off. But if you had to make a guess, what sort of a defensive scheme do you think we're going to see the most at the beginning of the season? 4-man front, 3-man front, or
that's what we're going to base out of a 4 down. You know, that's my background, what I feel comfortable with, and you know, it's pretty much what they did a little bit last year. You know, when obviously in some of our sub packages we'll be in some 3-down looks to match personnel and things like that. But we'll predominantly base out of a 4 down.
Well, Mike, I mean, it is just, I can't tell people enough how much of a pleasure it is. And you were a great football player, but beyond that, you were a great human being. And if you can get kids to play with even 60% of what you brought to the table, we're going to be just fine.
Well, that probably means more to me than anything than the coaching. If I can be a good human being, and then, you know, that means that's probably one of the better compliments I've ever got. Now, some of these players and things may not feel the same way whenever we're at practice, but, you know, I think I'm pretty good sometimes.
Well, Mike, thanks so much for being our guest, and best of luck next August when we start playing guys with different color jerseys.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. We sure appreciate everything you do, Doc. It's great to be back and see some old friends and familiar faces.
Right on. Well, that is going to wrap up our first interview segment, so what we'll do is we'll clear this out and we'll bring in our second guest right now. Welcome back to Sports Look, and we make the transition from a fall sport to a spring sport. We bring Brett Merritt back to the set. And Coach, realistically, you had to get at least one win against Kingsville if you wanted to keep alive your hopes to go into the LSC, and you got that much-needed one win against Kingsville.
Yes, sir.
It was a weekend that was supposed to be a game on Friday, 2 on Saturday, 1 on Sunday, but you guys correctly read the forecast and decided, probably not a good idea to play on Friday.
Yeah, just looking at the weather, it looked like less than ideal conditions to play, you know, baseball or anything, or really any outdoor sport for that matter. So we agreed with Kingsville mutually to move those games, and they had no problem. They didn't want to play in the cold weather either.
It's really a situation, people don't factor in how much the wind affects a baseball game. It's not just the flight of the ball, but because there's so much dirt that gets blown around, you can water the field down all you want. And an inning and a half later, it's just dust blowing in the breeze.
Right, and it's a problem that's very specific to this region, and you see a lot of local universities doing the turf fields now, and the reason is not because of the precipitation, but as you pointed out, just dirt blowing everywhere, and you finish those games and you feel like you just left the beach. You got, the sand in your ears and everything, and it just makes for nasty conditions. And I know, like with me, I get a bunch of gunk in my eyes, and yeah, it's less than ideal for sure.
Was that part of the reason for grassing in the foul lines down first baseline and third baseline, or was that a decision that was made irregardless of how much the wind blows?
Yeah, I think if you look at a lot of college baseball fields, it's like that. It's just less maintenance, but that's been there since before we got here, and all the pictures I've seen of the facility, I don't think I've ever seen a dirt baseline there.
Coach, looking at your series against Kingsville, I had seen kind of a pitching rotation. You changed around the pitching a little bit. What was the thinking behind throwing Joy in your first game instead of Capayan?
Yeah, actually, that's the way it's been. If you look at the majority of our games this week or this season, I think there was one occasion where we had a shorter week and Capayan had started the game. It was because of the Easter weekend. We played a game on a Thursday, and we wanted to keep all the starters on their normal rotation. So for the majority of the season, actually, I guess since the last time we played Angelo, Jonathan Joy came in relief. Our starters struggled, and he's been our Friday night guy really ever since then.
And in terms of the batting order, I've seen some different combinations and permutations, to borrow a phrase from statistics. Obviously, you're looking for a guy that's going to get on base. Do you just try and find the guy that's got the best on-base percentage going into that particular series?
Absolutely, and Zach Shank, who's a senior for us, has been one of the hottest hitters, actually leads the conference in hits right now and is maybe second in batting average or something like that, and he's been just another senior having a great season, and so we bumped him up in the order. We moved some other pieces around, and I think, you saw a little bit more productive lineup there.
Oh, yeah, no question about it. And I'm really impressed with him at the plate. I mean, he's clearly on a hot streak, but that kid's got a cannon out in right field.
Yeah, no, he's made some, not just good throwing plays, but just great play in general in the outfield. He's made some great diving catches this weekend, and really the entire season he's been a rock for us. And he's athletic enough and versatile that you've seen him in his career. Freshman year, he was conference freshman of the year as a pitcher, and then sophomore year moved to third base, and then being a great teammate and a great team guy, we moved him to the outfield in order to open up a third base for Garland Webster, who's been a big part to us having a great defense in the infield. And so Zach has really just moved around and been just such a useful guy for us.
Another guy that really impresses me, not only because he's got great hands and a rocket arm, but Andy Villalona is almost like having another coach actually out on the field. He is just a smart young man. Yeah, no, I mean, you talk about us last year and really turning things around, and it started with our philosophy that we wanted to have a great infield defense, and so bringing Andy in was a huge part of that. He led the entire country in fielding percentage last year, and being a shortstop, that's a tough thing to do. And we know that our field doesn't always take the truest hop sometimes. And so for him to play shortstop, for 45-plus games last year and only make 3 errors is really unheard of at the college level. I mean, even at the pro level, that's pretty outstanding stat. And so he's awesome out there, and he brings a lot of effort and intensity and passion with him. And so he's certainly one of the seniors that we lean on to lead. One of the crew here for SportsLook is a young lady named Brooklyn Beal, and she's been doing color commentary for me on your games. And she and I have been just astounded at how many times he'll call time, he'll go in, he'll talk to a pitcher, and then the very next pitch, the pitcher will throw a strike. So I think that kid should go into coaching too. Yeah, he's almost like a cheerleader out there, and I said he's big on really being a good teammate and being, team chemistry and all those things. And so when he's out there, I think it's
it's a relief as a pitcher to know that you have a shortstop that's back there that's going to make plays behind you and make you look good. And so, yeah, he goes in and talks to those guys and say, hey, just, let me do my thing back here, let me work, and he talks to our guys and he does a great job, which is what you want your seniors and your shortstops and things like that to do.
Looking at your roster, you have a lot of ball players from what I call new states. You've got a lot of ball players from New Mexico, but you've also got a lot of players like Villalona from New York. What's the connection to the Empire State?
Well, I think first off, just starting with New Mexico, we're Eastern New Mexico University, so when we got here, several years ago, we noticed that we hardly had any New Mexico kids on our roster. So we want that to be the foundation of what we're doing. In terms of kids from New York, it started last year with Andy and Alex, our two middle infielders that were All-Americans. I had an old coaching buddy that called me about those guys, and we brought them down here, and they had tremendous success for us, obviously, to be first-team All-Americans and the Gold Glove for Andy and all those different things. And so Coach Gomez decided to capitalize that because they're very well-known players in the state, and to try to bring several other guys down from New York. And I think the opportunity to play in a climate like ours where it's warm weather and you can be outside every day, and then the awesome affordability of our university and the town and just a lot of things, we connected with a couple kids and it turned out to be a great fit.
A young man that was part of the team last year, and I think we talked about this last time, but I'm still amazed by it, so I'm going to talk about it again in this episode. Levi Chandru, to make the transition from being a catcher to being a relief pitcher, and that kid's just got amazing stuff considering that he's only been pitching for a short amount of time.
Right. Talking about another guy that's just an outstanding teammate and one of our seniors that we lean on heavily to lead, we actually recruited him originally as a pitcher, and people don't know that he was a catcher at his junior college, didn't get much of a playing opportunity. And we brought him in here, and the entire last fall, we had him slated to be one of our actually starting pitchers. And then we had an injury, an academic problem, and then something else. And the next thing you know it, we're 10 games into the season, and he's catching every other game for us. And so it was one of those things where we actually thought super highly of his pitching last year. But being the good teammate, he realized that we had no one else to catch, so he jumped back into that catching role. This year, we were able to bring in some other catchers, and we knew that he had that potential for greatness. And when we talked to him about pitching this year, there was never any complaint about, well, I was the catcher last year or anything. It's like whatever's best for the team. And so he's a guy that's, been awesome. I mean, his stuff is electric. He has an arm that a lot of the pro scouts are asking about. And then just, man, to be just such a mentally tough kid to come in and always be reliable as a kid that comes in, throws strikes, and then in the dugout just be a great teammate when he's not pitching. You still see him sneaking in there to catch bullpens or warm-up pitchers between innings because he loves doing it. But, he's been another pleasant surprise for us this year, and I couldn't be happier because he's a great kid.
And speaking of pleasant surprises, maybe not a surprise to you and Coach Gomez, but Enrique Perez, I mean, that kid has just been way better this year on the mound than I thought he was going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Like when we talk to our freshmen or new guys that come into the program about our expectations for being a pitcher for our program, all we have to do is point to Enrique, because Enrique is a kid that came in as a walk-on, and it was a part of our redshirt program, JV program, and things like that. And he's a self-made player. And a lot of credit goes to Coach LV, our strength coach here, who's, in my opinion, one of the best strength coaches in the country. And he helped Enrique put on a lot of size and a lot of strength over his freshman year and built that foundation for him to be a great player. So, man, you talk about what you want out of your kids, and, this kid's a tireless worker. He's a gym rat. He's always in there working out. And then he's extremely polite, extremely coachable. He's a great teammate. He cheers. I mean, he does everything that you want a kid to do, on a baseball team. And so now I think this is the year. Last year, he had some great individual outings for us, but sometimes because of the success of the pitching staff and being one of the better pitching teams in the country, it was tough to get Enrique in. But I always believed that he was competitive and a hard worker and good. And then this has been the year really where, I mean, he's leading our pitching staff in a lot of different categories. And against tougher opponents in conference, he's stepped his game up tremendously. And you know, at the end of every series, usually you end up talking to the coaches, and his name always comes up. Man, that kid is just a great competitor, and he really helped our kids off balance. And you know, tell that kid that he pitched a heck of a game. And so, you know, all credit goes to him because he's just a super hard worker.
Coach, only one more home weekend series for Greyhound baseball, and that series will probably determine whether you make the trip to the postseason or not.
Right, yeah, we'll see how this next upcoming weekend shakes out. But the way it looks right now is that it's going to come down to probably the team we're playing. So UTPB, that Cinco de Mayo weekend, we need as many fans out there as we can. And we're going to be battling to make the conference tournament for the first time really in over 10 years or so.
2005.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Wow, so it's been a while. Yeah.
Yes, I was there. I remember it well. And, Coach, we will point out, and knock on wood, that that's going to be the Friday night doubleheader, Saturday, one game on Sunday format.
Right, yeah, weather permitting.
Weather permitting, exactly. And Sunday will be the senior day for you guys?
Correct.
Okay, yeah. So mark that on your schedule.
Yeah. And yeah, other than being a big game, man, we have a huge senior class, so if you can come out and honor our kids, that'd be great.
Well, Coach, congratulations on the success at this point, and let's hope that the weekend of May 12th, we're playing some Lone Star Conference.
Absolutely, let's do it.
All right. Well, that is going to wrap up the interview segment, so what we'll do is we'll clear the set, and I'll finish up with an overtime right now. If you are a fan of the NBA, and I imagine that all of you are, you've heard the name Kristaps Porzingis. He is a great ball player for the New York Knicks. He's a great ball player that hurt his knee at the end of the regular season, but earlier this week he tweeted to all of his fans that he will be ready for the next season opener next fall because he has the healing power of a lizard. That got me to thinking, is he part reptilian, or because he's from Latvia, did something get lost in the translation? Well, I'll get back to you on that one. That does conclude an overtime, and that will conclude an episode of SportsLook. I'd like to thank my two guests, Mike Walton from Greyhound Football, Brett Merritt from Greyhound Baseball. Had a floor crew with a brand new director, Mr. Orlando, doing a great job for me tonight. So for those aforementioned people, this is Doc Elder saying, so long. From the Greyhound Women's Track and Field Squad, M&M, not a delicious ticket.
I was once out strolling.
Has been an overtime, and that will wrap up the sport.
When I thought I'd lay myself down to rest,